Stand up.
From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, holiday tips on maintaining your sanity without drinking yourself silly. And now, the podcast host who has no need for self-medicating because he has the calm mind of a Japanese snow monkey, Pete Dominic!
Yes, indeed. The calm mind of a Japanese snow monkey is how I am often described and compared. Thank you, Pico, for seeing me. As always, great to have you joining me, and thank you for pressing play on another episode of Stand Up, where today I will be joined by two brilliant women on the show. Christine Romans of CNN, chief business correspondent, and the co-anchor of their early morning daily show, Early Start. You can see Christine every morning on CNN, and you can hear her today on Stand Up. How about that? And also, another amazing, thoughtful, hilarious, and very enlightening conversation with Dr. Christina Greer of Fordham University. Chrissy Greer, my good friend, joins me. We had another great one. You're not going to want to miss that. But before all that, I want to wish you all a happy winter solstice. I love this time of year. It is the shortest day of the year or the longest night of the year, depending on how you look at it. And I looked up some customary ways to celebrate the solstice, and this is what I found. Build a Yule altar. Okay, I don't know exactly what that is, but make an evergreen Yule wreath. Maybe I'll make a wreath tomorrow. How about that? Burn a Yule log. I don't have a fireplace, but I make a lot of bonfires. My solo stove, which is kind of a gimmicky gift that I'm sure you're giving or getting. Decorate a Yule tree. Exchange nature-based gifts. I like that. Give back to nature. Alrighty. Celebrate in candlelight. Ooh. And finally, set up a meditation space. How about if I set up a meditation space in candlelight while giving back to nature, exchanging nature-based gifts, and all the while burning a Yule log? I can do it. I'm going to do it. Yeah. Mom and Dad coming down this weekend. Really excited for Christmas with the family. Very excited to hear from you at the Hangout Thursday night. We'll have a little Christmas celebration with stand-up community members. If you're not a subscriber, you should sign up just to hang out with us on Thursday nights, much less support the podcast. It's only $5, and you can always pay a lot more. Thank you very much to Jody Miller. I was talking with Jody Marie Miller yesterday, and she was giving me some good guest ideas, and then she upgraded her subscription. So thank you very much, Jody. Looking forward to talking with you more, and anybody else who wants to reach out anytime. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Sign up to join me, standupwithpete.com right now if you haven't already. I just want to mention a couple of news stories, and we'll get to both of my guests. First of all, you probably heard the House Ways and Means Committee voted yesterday 24-16 to release 6 years of Donald Trump's tax information to the full House. So, haven't seen it yet. I'm not sure what's going to come out of it. I think probably that Donald Trump didn't make any money or doesn't have any money. We're going to find out a lot, I believe. And now Republicans in the House are warning. They're warning that releasing Trump's tax returns could set a dangerous precedent, even leading the release of the Supreme Court's justices' tax returns. And so everybody on Twitter had the exact same reaction, because Twitter's still a thing, working fairly normal as far as I could tell. I don't know. But everybody reacted to this warning that they might have to release the Supreme Court justices' tax returns with the same reaction, which is awesome. Good. Let's do it. Yes. I can't think of anything more fair than public service employees having to be transparent about where they're getting their income from, because you don't want legislators and policymakers and the head of the highways department in your town to be in charge of handing out contracts to their friends, because then the friend's like, hey, man, can I get the highway contract? Can I get that bridge contract? And here is a pie for your wife. If I get that contract, and then pick up the pie, and there's a bunch of cash under it. I just like to say that corruption was best illustrated in Shawshank Redemption. Anyway, everybody knows why, that if you're governor or your mayor or your president, for God's sake, we've got to see how you're making your money and be transparent about your taxes. That's pretty much every previous president candidate did, except for Trump. Well, now we're finally going to get to see them. So maybe we'll get to see those Supreme Court justices' taxes as well. So then we can finally figure out who paid off all of Brett Kavanaugh's bills. That was the reaction of a lot of other people when Republican Congressman Kevin Brady threatened, well, what's going to happen next? We're going to have to say the Supreme Court justices' taxes. I don't know why he became Jimmy Stewart, but it just seemed like it would be more fun to make him sound like a bumbling idiot. Well, what are you going to do now? Next, you're going to find out where Brett Kavanaugh's money is, for God's sake. Yeah, so all eyes on Donald Trump's taxes. Can't wait to find out what's in there. Yesterday, also, news breaking, the plans are underway for the Ukrainian president and Time's Man of the Year. I don't know why that was the second accolade I gave him. Was it Time? It doesn't matter. Anyway, Volodymyr Zelensky visiting Capitol Hill. Congress just gave Ukraine $45 billion in funding to support their war and their government during this war, which is, 300 days in, I think I read. So that's a pretty ballsy move for the Ukrainian president on Wednesday. That's certainly going to be a big story to see him walking around Capitol Hill. Is he going to be wearing the green army shirt and pants? I wonder what he's going to be wearing. Dude is a real stud. A real hero for our time. I guess we need heroes with all these villains. Elon Musk saying that he's going to resign because of the stupid poll that he took on Twitter, but that he's got to wait to find someone to fill in for him. So who knows? That was just all bullshit. Read this, that threats against lawmakers continue to surge, according to the Capitol Hill police, who recorded more than 9,000 threats against members of Congress just this past year. The chief of the Capitol Hill Police said Monday morning during a Senate Rules Committee hearing. Pretty sobering statistic. Threats against federal lawmakers have surged about 400% in the past 6 years. What happened about 6 years ago? And here's an investigation worth watching. Steve Bannon, writing over at MSNBC's Maddow blog. He's always great. Steve Bannon, one of the smartest bloggers. The U.S. Education Department's Civil Rights Enforcement arm has launched an investigation into a North Texas school district whose superintendent was secretly recorded ordering librarians to remove LGBTQ-themed library books. Oh, they hate the gay books. They hate books with gay characters or gay love scenes. They are the scariest thing in the world to them. It's like water to a witch. I mean, they really don't like those books. Terrified that they or their kid might be gay. Very sad, and also something that we should all be vigilant and on the lookout for, that these books do get removed anyhow, that they silently get removed by the superintendent, somebody else, librarian. Judd Legum had a really interesting piece at his outlet, Popular Info, about this librarian who is petitioning to remove a whole bunch of books. Really, really outrageous stuff. And everybody's got to stay involved with their local school districts, and hopefully every local school district has a good organization, progressive parents who are concerned about this kind of thing, and been a really important thing for me to be involved where I live. Or you could just not be involved and then be forced to go to church while carrying an AR-15. Okay, well, I'm sure there's other news stories out there, but I don't have any more time to get to them. This was a pretty busy day for me. Did a lot working on taping some shows for next week so I can take some time off. So I'm just going to get right to my interviews. But first, I do want to tell you about my friend Mark Lawler, who's been a long-time listener of the show. And he and his family last year moved up to Vermont. And one of the great things about this community of listeners, so many people have become friends with each other. And it gives everybody a chance to see and hear what other like-minded people are doing with their lives. And last year, Mark, who, like I said, has been a diehard listener and supporter, very generous supporter, subscriber, he decides to pick up and move to Vermont with his family. And I received more than my fair share of vitamin N photos from him. I love him. Great, great shots that he sends me. And he told me that my courage to build this independent thing, this project, this podcast, and with it, the community, really inspired him to do the same. So he's a real foodie. And for the last 20 years, he's been mixing his own dry rubs for smoking meat. So he asked me to have you all take a look at his website, andmaple.com, andmaple.com. And he's got a new dry rub that he's made and he's selling, and you can get it and you can support him. It's Applewood Smoked Dry Rub, perfect for pork and chicken. Organic granulated maple sugar, dark brown sugar, and golden sugar are cold smoked with apple wood and then blended with smoked paprika, sweet Hungarian paprika, New Mexican chili, garlic, onion, mustard, rosemary, ginger, and black pepper to create a unique dry rub that's smoky and sweet with a little bit of heat. Oh my gosh, that sounds... Who wrote that? Mark, good stuff. Oh, I love it. Anyway, getting these before Christmas might be hard, but if you want to reach out to Mark, check out andmaple.com. Use the offer code STANDUP at checkout, and you'll get a 10% discount. He's also offering free standard shipping for any orders over $25. So head on over to andmaple.com, and don't forget to use the offer code STANDUP. And if Mark's such a good guy that I wanted to just plug that for him, and he sent me a sample, and I had some roasted chicken with it. And I mean, I don't know anything about these things, but it was absolutely delicious as described. So I highly recommend it. Mark's a great guy who I'm hopefully going to get up to go skiing with him this year. We'll see. Anyway, if you are a listener and a supporter of the show and have been for a long time, there's something that you want me to say, plug, read, I'm happy to consider it. Send it my way. standupwithpete@gmail.com. And one more quick thing, a question, a favor, maybe an opportunity for a young person to come on the show. I've decided to start a series of conversations with young folks, not necessarily American, most likely American, but ages around 19 to 25, the Gen Zers, like my daughters are in, just as a way to try to understand my own daughters and their future and their concerns and how they can get along. And I think a lot of parents will like these conversations, and I think we've all got a lot to learn from young folks, because we certainly think we know more than they do. In many ways, obviously, we do, but in several, we don't. So, and always I want to platform a wide variety of voices, especially those that don't have the platform that I do. I want to hand it over to them and hear from them. So, if you or someone you know is in that age range, about 19 to 25, I'll make an exception. Passionate about life, thoughtful, educated on an idea, trend, or cultural issue, and want to be on a popular podcast, Stand Up with Pete Dominic, reach out to me. standupwithpete@gmail.com, and we'll talk, and we'll see if we can maybe do an on-air, on-show interview. I've got a really, really impressive young woman joining me next week. She'll be first, Lucy Solomon, and then I'll be talking to my new intern, Odessa Son, who is out in Wisconsin, and then we'll go from there. So if you or someone you know, if your son or daughter or someone you know you think would be good to talk about, well, anything here on the show with me that they care about, then let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. All right, now it's time to get to my first guest. She is CNN's chief business correspondent, anchor of Early Start every weekday, 5 to 6 a.m. East. She has won all the awards. She is an author of 3 books, and they are all advice on investments. Smart is the New Rich series, really good. She used to be the host of Your Money on CNN with Ali Velshi. They were like co-hosts of it, and I would join them regularly, and we have come a long way as friends in this business, and I've always called on her when I've got questions about economics and finance and politics and how it all blends, and she's always just so good. She's got a great set of contacts, and she's so good at talking about stuff on the show. She is still, of course, on Twitter, @Christine Romans, and it was a great conversation. Too short, in my opinion, but I always love talking to her. It was great to get her back on. Please go on Twitter, let her know that you heard her here, if that's still a thing, if you're still on, and of course, watch her on CNN. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go with the great Christine Romans. Yes, I have her. Christine Romans continues to agree to talk to me and let me record it. Thank you, my friend. It's great to talk to you.
I always like talking to Bradley Cooper. Oh, wait. Isn't Bradley Cooper? Who is this?
He's your go-to for that? I bet you some huge celebrities watch you every morning, and I'm sure they have let you know somehow, some way, at some event or something, some CNN heroes, they walk up to you and say, "You're on in my house every morning." Do you have any stories?
I do have a funny George Clooney story. I was with Ashley Banfield at just a cocktail party or lunch thing. It was a lunch thing, actually, for the movie Gravity.
Yeah.
To Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. And I was just like starstruck, and he's had all these people around him, and he's kind of a pretty smart guy. And Ashley said, let's go up and say hi to him. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never. I mean, I could never. She's like, come on. So I went walking up, and he looked at me, and he put his hand out, and I said, hi, and he's like, I know exactly who you are.
Yeah.
Are we really going to have a government shutdown? And why do they keep doing this with the debt ceiling? And I couldn't believe it. So he was watching my debt ceiling coverage. I thought that was really nice. He did not seem like super starry. He was just like a guy who wanted to talk about government policy. It was kind of cool.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that story. I'm sure there are others. But since you mentioned debt ceiling, are we having to deal with that ever again now that we still have this political divide? I mean, is that going to be a thing that we're going to keep running up against?
It's possible it's a thing. I was just talking to the esteemed economist Ken Rogoff about this a week or so ago, and he'd like to see it just get rid of the debt ceiling.
Sure.
I mean, in a way, it's this weird thing where Congress says, we're going to spend this much money, and then Congress says, we're not allowed to spend this much money. Like, you can't have it both ways. You have to, pay your bills. And it's become this false kind of political charade that goes on with Democrats and Republicans. Republicans have had to raise the debt ceiling with a Republican president too. So it's become this sort of weird, dangerous dance that they do. If you really want to talk about spending too much money, then you have to not spend all the money. And then they spend the money, and then they talk about how they shouldn't. And it's just backwards.
And we also have a continuing resolution or something. I mean, it's crazy that, just agreeing on how much money the government's going to spend in a budget resolution. That's not going away either, I guess, right?
No, it's arguing over the spending. That's clearly what, and we're heading into this political moment where you have a president of one party who is halfway through his term, and a house that is dominated by another party, and a very, very just on a hair's, just on a knife's edge Senate. So there's a lot of opportunity for some disagreement and potential trouble in the early part of next year.
Well, you've written about that for a couple pieces that I'll link to, and I want to ask you about it. But just as we approach, we're talking the week before Christmas. Do you know are there any, by the way, hot gifts? I mean, how old are your sons now? 20, 25? I mean, are there still, do we still do that? Is there anything fun to be said about what's everybody's trying to get for either their kids or for themselves? Because all I want to buy now is that Twitter is now littered with ads, like every single little shortcut item or tool, like cutting board, knives, and wrenches and stuff. Those are all the things I'm buying. But what do
your girls want? What do your kids want this year?
Clothes, and one of them wants a computer. Like digital items and clothes, nothing really. Then you try to find surprises, other things, art supplies.
I know. My 12-year-old, who gave me a list of 14 things, 10 of them were tennis shoes. I started Googling these tennis shoes. They're like Japanese versions of Jordan 4s from 2000 and X.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's markets. There's whole shoe markets. Have you ever covered that?
No, but I need to look into it. But it's all these he watches TikTok. These people, there's like shoes and cars on TikTok. It's like, I have to really get in there, and I had to explain to him, you have to go and look at it on Amazon. If it doesn't exist, I can't buy that for you. And he's like, well, maybe Santa can. I'm like, okay, well, you're 12. We need to have a conversation here about
I love it.
About who's got the who's buying the gifts here.
It's about time. We're going to sit down. Well, the other thing is, real quick, I have girls, and not that in any way cosmetics are gender specific, but I'm going to go ahead and be traditional here and say my girls wear makeup, and makeup is expensive, and I didn't know exactly how much they wear, just cosmetics in general, which is why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, Christina, and I'm not sure half this stuff does anything that it says it does. All these masks and skin care and moisturizers, come on. Are they really necessary?
Are they necessary? Yeah, they're necessary.
I'm not having that argument with my daughters, but I'm saying
you pick the thing you want. For my boys, it's just they wear their hair really floppy on the front. All these kids have these floppy.
I've seen it. Yep.
I can't see anybody's eyes. I mean, I can't see anybody's eyes. None of my kids and none of their friends. But there's a lot of volumizing and texturizing happening in the hair. So I feel your pain on the beauty supplies.
The molding mud. All right, let's get to one of your pieces here at CNN. Why recession fears are back. Americans are losing faith. And this story kind of pivots on the idea of consumer confidence and the consumer price index. There's actually ways to measure these things. As always, you get to all of them. But why does it matter what we think exactly here in terms of what's about to happen?
Well, it's so interesting. That story, I really was interested because I had heard Scott Kirby, who is the CEO of United Airlines. He said first on CNBC and then on CNN this morning, he said, everyone keeps talking about a recession, and I get it. We have to plan for what we're worried about, but I don't see it in any of my numbers. And he said, look, we're planning as if there's going to be a mild recession next year. And he said, a lot of people in the business world are trying to talk ourselves into one, is what it feels like to me. He said, if I didn't watch business shows or read the Wall Street Journal, the word recession wouldn't be in my vocabulary. We just don't see it. So things have changed. And it's this interesting moment where people aren't buying couches and sneakers and sportswear. All of a sudden, they're buying plane tickets and Airbnb weekends. And he also said in his third quarter earnings call, he said September is usually one of the worst months of the year for them. And it's back to school. It's not a really good time for travel. And it was the second or third best September they'd ever had. He said it's because hybrid work, 2.5 years into this pandemic, has every weekend like a holiday weekend. People want to do stuff and want experiences. So you have to buy a plane ticket, to do those experiences. So we've just changed so much. We're trying to gauge if there's going to be a recession or not. And people hear the word recession. It makes them nervous about a recession, but they're still spending their money. And we still have a strong job market. So we just have a situation it's just really a different situation than anything I can certainly ever remember. And it just makes it hard to plan for what's going to happen next.
Is that why all these people, you started that by saying that a whole bunch of people are talking about it, and if I didn't know better, I wouldn't think it was coming. And the experts and the people that work in finance and economics trying to predict or predicting a recession so they can kind of be prepared and react to it because uncertainty is always or are they also, I almost thought when you said that they're trying to leverage it to make money off of, because now you can bet against just about anything and make a fortune, I guess, still. So I don't know if that's what you meant, but it's. Oh,
no, I just meant that they're planning for it because
got it, yeah.
you want to, here's what Mark Zandi said. He said, recession is a loss of faith. What happens is consumers worry about losing a job, right? And so then they pull back on their spending. If they pull back on their spending, right, business leaders worry that their sales will decline. And so they start laying off workers. And you start to see preemptive move. Like if you're worried about a recession, well, then you're starting to prepare for layoffs. And people naturally go into a crouch. And then that actually, the self-reinforcing negative cycle, right? So it starts to feed on itself, and then you run the risk of talking yourself into an actual recession because you're preparing for one. But outside of that, the numbers just aren't really showing it. The economy was 2.9% in the third quarter. Jobless rate, even if you see some layoffs and job loss, the jobless rate, the Fed says, could be 4.5% by the end of next year, which is still historically, on the
50-year low, you write. The unemployment rate is near a 50-year low, you write in this piece. I mean, it's hard to, we have to talk about that within unemployment with that statistic in the context all the time. And when it gets to, media or politicians being hyperbolic about everything, then you lose the focus. 50-year low. But that's not going to last is the next sentence you write. So, the Federal Reserve, you say, lowered its forecast for growth next year, just half a point.
But it's still positive. I mean, they're still looking for positive growth. I mean, you could still skate through this with no recession or a very mild recession. And the other thing, too, is that we get the R word is so scary. Typically, it means big layoffs, a big jump in unemployment, and businesses fail, right? And a huge loss of income for American consumers. You could see a recession that doesn't have big job loss, that has maybe a stagnant feeling economy and corporate profits get dinged, But that scenario might actually not feel as bad as every single American household facing inflation.
Right.
Like what's the trade-off the Fed's trying to do? If they're trying to raise interest rates and actually cause some job loss and cause some slowing in the economy, so maybe it's a trade-off. Like right now, everybody feels inflation and it hurts. In a recession, it might actually hurt less.
Although,
that's what they're kind of banking on.
Got it. I was also reading, though, that inflation is abating. Is that the right word? Is decreasing. It's slowing. It's coming down. The price of things are coming down. And I think I read, was it your piece, that it has to do with that places ordered a lot of stuff to sell. Stores ordered a lot of inventory to sell, and they couldn't necessarily sell it all. So they're stuck with stuff, so they're cutting prices. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, I'm definitely hearing that. And they've got a lot of stuff to move. They've had a really hard time gauging what consumers are going to want and going to do. I mean, for a long time, it was couches, big screen TVs, and comfy pant and shirt, almost PJ combos. Then all of a sudden they had way too much of that stuff. And so they were discounting that. And then you also had all these supply chain shortages, especially in the food industry. So all of a sudden, you're low on chicken wings. You're low on chicken wings. There's, oh my gosh, we don't have enough chicken wings. Everybody orders. The backlog clears. Now you've got orders that are too big. Chicken wings get, discounted. So that's how come we're seeing these wild swings in some kinds of categories. And I think that for a nimble consumer, there are some options there. In inflation, the thing I really worry about is the rising rent costs. I mean, the National Association of Realtors thinks that rent's going to rise like 5% next year. That's not something that you can. So you can switch cuts of meat, or you can go to Aldi, and Aldi for Thanksgiving. Another couple other stores did this too, but they rolled back all their prices to 2018 levels. So I mean, if you can go to a different store, you can dodge that inflation.
Eat differently, or even eat less. You can even cut back somehow. But you're saying put that against your rent, that you can't dodge.
There are things that you can't dodge, and that is one of those things. For some consumers, and people always tell me this, that they're for the lowest, probably 10% of earners, it always feels like a recession. They have lived in a recession and always live in a recession, and then you put higher food costs on when you don't have the ability to drive to a different grocery store, and then that becomes
gas prices.
A real crisis. Yeah. Well, gas prices are coming down. They're down 54 cents the last month. Oh, yeah,
they're down now, but you're saying, it's always a recession for people where gas prices are high, but they're down, Yeah,
but gas prices are down. So that is a little bit of a tailwind for us heading into the end of the year. And I think that they'll bottom out sometime early next year, but I think we have good news on the gas front here for the next few weeks at least.
Christine, at the end of one of your pieces here, you write, COVID broke the economy, and putting it back together has been hard to measure. Tens of millions of jobs were lost overnight. Schools closed. Factories shuttered. More than 1 million lives lost. More than 2 years later, we're still struggling to gauge the strength and durability of the recovery. And I don't know what question to ask. I thought that was an eloquent way to wrap that piece up. But it's It's important, I think, to keep perspective in life. I try to do it each morning with my meditation. Seriously, it makes all the difference in the world, reminding myself what I have. But it's also important to keep perspective in the realities of our lives and what COVID did to break the economy and our spirits and and take so many people. It's important to try to figure out where we are at now and where we thought we would be. And I remember washing down my groceries and wondering if I needed to buy a rifle to protect my family. And I don't have to do that. Either of those things. I didn't just telling people today.
I think that perspective is so, and I struggled to put into words what I try to say on TV every day, which is, if you want me to tell you that this retail sales report says the economy is A, good, or B, bad, I can't tell you that, because what has happened has been so monumental that we are just in a little tiny pinprick in a sea of dots, and I don't know what that shape is going to look like until we're further away from it. I mean, I just don't know how it's going to turn out. And I think that is why people say they feel so lousy about the economy and they feel so lousy about their prospects, when in reality, they're going to Disney in record numbers, and they're buying plane tickets in record numbers, and they are going out there and living their lives and spending their money again. So we feel so untethered by what happened, and I think that starts to reverberate in other ways throughout the economy. But when I say, COVID broke the economy, I mean, just think of it. Snap back. The economy came roaring back so ferociously and so quickly that it caught everyone by surprise. Demand was so big that supply couldn't keep up because of broken supply chains. And that made inflation ignite, right? Because when you have demand is bigger than supply, that's just economics 101. Then you throw a war in Ukraine on top of it. So we had, the exogenous shock, as economists call it, of a pandemic, and then a recovery that was much stronger than anybody expected, and then a war on top of that. It's like these three things all together. Yep. There's just no playbook for it.
And it's important to have some sense of all of those things and nuance when you think about it, when you have a conversation about it, as opposed to minimizing it to one thing or another. Although if you had to, you can't. I mean, I was going to say you would say COVID, but the war is unrelated. I think it's fair to say to COVID, Russia's war and what that has done to a lot of different, obviously, energy industry, much less.
This is what and you've heard me say this before. For the people who try to boil something down to a bumper sticker, right? Yeah. Blame Biden or Trump did this, there is if you can fit what you think is happening on a bumper sticker, I promise you're totally wrong.
Yeah, and you couldn't do that in 2008 or any conversation about economics, which is why I love talking to you about this stuff. But hey, quickly, housing market, interest rates, or mortgage rates. A home went up for sale on my street here in Rockland County, New York, and I was like, oh, interesting. And so I got all interested to see what would happen. But my thought was, well, who's going to buy a house at these interest rates? Wait till they go down. And then I say that to the agent who I know, who was walking into that house, and he says, hey, they used to be 10% back in. People will do it. Whatever. That's my impression of all the real estate agents talking about past mortgage rates. But what do you got? Anything on the housing market?
So my cocktail party conversation in the Christmas holiday party circuit is so interesting. About 60% at least of the conversation is about real estate. And I don't know if that's just because I live in the same place where I live in the Northeast too, but everybody wants to know about, mortgage rates
or
doubled.
That you hang out with a lot of tycoons.
No, I
real
hang
estate
out with a lot
tycoons.
Of people. A lot of people are thinking about paying for college in a few short years, and whether they're going to stay in that house while they're paying for college. But look, mortgage rates might come down a little bit next year, and here's why. I hope. I want to preface this by saying no one knows what's going to happen with home prices or the housing market. We had 3 years of double-digit price appreciation, record price appreciation, and 3% mortgage rates. That was just freaking insane. And now we have to recalibrate. And I don't know if that's going to mean some big decline in home prices, or it just means home prices stop rising. There's not a lot of houses for sale. And people buy a house because they have to move to a community for a job or be for the schools or to be close to family. It's not like you're buying a house like you're buying a mutual fund. You're buying a house because you're going to live in it and consume it. So it's a little bit different. But I think that the Mortgage Bankers Association thinks mortgage rates could come down below 6% next year. In the last 5 weeks, they've actually drifted a little bit lower. They're below 7% again now. So that's good. And now your real estate impression was very good. But we are still below the post-war average at this rate.
Hey, we're still below the post-war average. Come on, get a house. Everybody gets a house. Can you imagine during the war? This guy's
But prices aren't coming down. I mean, prices went up so fast. Now, where you could see prices come down next year, and this is just me. This is me with my guessing hat on. I think Sacramento. I think Phoenix. I think San Diego, I think San Francisco, I think Seattle, maybe Denver. I think those prices are going to have to come down. They went up too much. They just went up way too much. And now with mortgage rates higher, I think you're going to find that home buyers are going to have a chance to get a foot in the door there.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. Would you buy Tesla stock right now? Would you tell people to buy Tesla stock? Meaning, is that company ever coming back? Meaning, have you ever seen a CEO behave so openly and outwardly that it affected the company?
No, I have not seen a CEO ever behave like this.
Can you imagine Scott Kirby, what is it, United Airlines, or Tim Cook at Apple just...
I just did an interview with the Rivian CEO, R.C. Scringe, and
that's that new high-priced electric vehicle car.
Yeah. Yep, it's a truck. It's a pretty cool. I mean, I think all the electric vehicles are cool. I'm like really. We drove down to that interview in an electric Mustang, which is also cool. Ooh. So I had this whole EV thing that I did, and anyway, I just kept thinking that the Rivian CEO could not be more different from the Tesla CEO, and they both make electric vehicles. There's like the same vision, utopian vision of, getting the world off fossil fuels, and a lifelong dream to do this. And they're so alike in that one way, and then different in every other way. It was really an interesting interview. I'll send you a link to it, Pete, so you can watch it.
Oh, I didn't know you did it already. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on all things electric cars. Real estate, well, everything that we talked about. Thank you very much for letting me call you.
All right, bye, Pete.
Bye. All right, there she goes, Christine Romans. How about it, everybody? Go say hi to her on Twitter. Let her know you heard her here on the show. Watch her on Early Start. It's actually the best show on CNN because they do a lot of hard news reporting. They do some great segments with international correspondents and packages that they put together. Some really good, I think, should be award-winning reporting. I really like it, and I always love Christine, so... Thank you, Christine, for joining me. I really appreciate it. It was great to catch up with her a little bit, too, off before I hit record and after, too. So let's now get to my second guest, who is one of my favorites. I just love how authentic and brilliant and funny and thoughtful my next guest is. She's become a good friend of mine over the last couple of years, especially now over the pandemic. We met when I was undeservedly sitting next to her on panels at MSNBC, and she, of course, is a professor at Fordham Law. She's a PhD. She is an author. She is a podcaster, co-host of FAQ NYC, and she's the host of The Blackest Questions on the Grio Podcast Network, working on a new book, and I'm always really excited to catch up with her. Ladies and gentlemen, on Twitter at Dr_CM Greer, Dr. Christina Greer, or as I call her, Chrissy.
All right, I've got her, and I've got both of her personal and professional personalities, because we talk about all kinds of stuff here when Dr. Christina Greer and Chrissy Greer are both here, and we're very excited whenever you are. Thank you for joining me this morning. Hello.
Hello. It makes it sound like I've got multiple personalities now.
You actually started that because you told me, do you want Chrissy Greer's answer or Dr. Greer? And I kind of like that. But when I feel like when we're talking about, say, nature and life and relationships or something, that's you. And when we're talking about other things, and then even then you may switch on and off. Do you like this time of year, Christmas area-ish?
Yeah, I do. I mean, autumn in New York is my favorite time of the year. Right. It's just, it's so beautiful. I think it rivals New England. This year, I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people and I don't think I'm alone. It doesn't feel Christmassy.
Why do you think
it feels like Christmas snuck up on all of us. I have bought nary a gift, and it is December 19th.
Same.
I mean, when I say not a one, I haven't ordered anything. I normally don't put up a tree because I go see family. But
that makes me feel human because you're a gift giver. You're a gift giver year round. You do all kinds of random gift giving and card giving. So that makes me feel good. I'm getting out there actually after we talk today. I'm headed out.
Well, I told people, I was like, listen, I think this might be Chrissy Greer gives you a cash. Like the one thing I'm doing today is I'm going to a little shop to see if they have the cash envelopes, the Christmas cash envelopes.
Oh yeah.
Because, I haven't gotten into it. And also, I told my family this, I need to purge, I need to get back on my quarterly purge. I've been doing like a seasonal purge, but it's not enough. And I'm tired of people buying me gifts, the family members, where it's like, oh, thanks. Totally not me. I keep it in my closet for 3 months and then I give it to Goodwill with the tags on it. So it's like they're wasting money. I'm wasting space. So I don't need anything right now. How about I tell you when I need something and we can do it?
Yeah. Purge meaning mainly you're thinking clothes. Don't get me any more clothes. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Or
I love my mom, but my mom doesn't fully know my style these days. So it's like, I bought you a pink tank top. And I'm like, I'm not 7, but thank you. What about December 21st? It's the solstice and it's the shortest day of the year. Does that mean anything to you? Yeah, well, I forgot to send you this picture yesterday. I took it because I knew we were going to be together. This time of year, I know a lot of people are like, it's dark, and it is. And it's, it's hard to kind of hold it together, but there's some beautiful sunrises and sunsets. Yeah. There's some beautiful clouds that emerge, and then it's like a reset. I mean, the beautiful thing about nature is that you can have resets beyond January 1st. Like a lot of people think like, okay, it's the new year. I have to start something new. It's like, no. Like each day, basically, you could start your whole new year if you want. You can start it on your birthday. You can start it on the solstice. You can start it on the first day of the month. You can start it on the new moon. You can start it on the full moon. Like you actually have a lot of opportunities if you psychologically need to reset something. So I think, on the solstice, I'll just make some intentions, not just for the remainder of the year. I've got to send out my reflection that I send out to people for them to fill out. So I'll probably do that today. And for your listeners, it's a reflection where you just reflect on kind of the various areas of your life that, work and personal and exercise and activities, and you give yourself a grade and say why. You have to justify your grade and then sort of talk about what you want to work on for next year. And then you kind of jog your memory and the highlights of the year. And then you kind of set some intentions for the next year.
Love it. Love that. Love it a lot. And I'm learning to love this time of year more than I think ever.
Yeah.
And
it's beautiful.
I used to get just so depressed in the build up to the sun setting shorter and shorter, and then get happier the more each, as it got longer, because I love long days. I do like that. Yeah. But now I'm embracing a 4:30 walk.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and I talk to my students about, SAD, seasonal affective disorder, which is real. I've written about it. I don't really have it, but I know it affects a lot of people. I mean, I've had friends who've needed special lamps just to help them get out of bed. I mean, it's like, because it can trigger depression. And as we saw last week with Twitch dying by suicide, like there are a lot of people who are really struggling internally that we don't really know about. And the seasons really do exacerbate that. And the holiday time, like a lot of people, if they're not close with their family, they feel some kind of way, or if they were close to their family, they've lost loved ones. Many years ago, 15 years ago now, I lost my aunt, my grandmother, my grandfather, all within like a week. Right before Christmas. Completely unrelated. All on my mother's side of the family. She, like, her whole family's just basically wiped out. It's just her and her sister now. And so it was just one of those things where, it ended up being the best Christmas ever. I mean, not the best Christmas, but like we were all together for the first time ever in a really, really, really long time, because we had 3 funerals to plan. So we actually, like, as a family, we got to play cards and, we were drinking, which, my grandmother would have been like, kids, but, we drank in the garage. And we had like really great family time, because for so long we would stagger our visits to make sure my grandparents always had sort of grandkids kind of coming through the house. So I hadn't seen my cousins in years, purposefully, because we just, it made no sense for both of us to go on one weekend when I could come one weekend and she could come, a different weekend.
I think this time of year can be sad for people just because they are remembering some of their happiest memories. I think we don't talk about that, which is that this time, obviously we can joke about all the horrible things that also can be ingrained in your memory around this time. But if you had, as a lot of people did, great memories from getting together with family and this time of year and presents with your kid, and then some of the people that were in those memories are gone, it can be sad. And I say that because I think it's just important to recognize where that sadness might be coming from, and you don't know it, so name it. And that's healthy.
And talk to people about it. I think a lot of people, I had a friend over yesterday, and his grandmother recently passed this year. And, I was like, I miss my grandma. My grandma passed 15 years ago. So it's just sort of like, it's okay to still miss your grandma. You don't have to, there's no clock on grief. And like, yes, I do think that people have to go through the 5 stages, but like, you can take as much time and you can miss your grandma for as long as you want.
I like that.
And that's okay. So
what about the other big question I wanted to ask you today for sure was, how are the young people? I'm thinking of doing a little series where, and maybe you can suggest some students or some young people, where I talk to different people, in their early 20s ish, about different subjects. And you can't generalize about a generation, but my Lord, things are different for them than they are now. And I'm not sure they know. My daughter's almost 18. She has no idea what's happening and the things that are happening rapidly. So I'm asking you for the health, state of the union of college students or people that your age, your students.
I really love this generation because they're super resilient, but I feel for them. They've gone through a lot. Like, a lot of them didn't have normal high schools. So like the normal interaction, besides technology, which has just been so difficult, because of online nonsense. But like, even just normal social interactions, like, having a crush on someone in your class. Well, you were on Zoom. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, even social interactions of how you make friends, it's just different. I mean, and I've seen this coming down the pike for years, even before COVID and even before this particular generation. But like, I always tell my students at the beginning of class, I teach, let's just say in a 1 to 2:15 block. I can't make you do anything before 1 o'clock. Like 1 o'clock, you're mine, right? But like before then, when you're coming in between 12:45 and 1, you can do your own thing. Like you can be on your phone, you can do whatever. And I always tell them, I'm like, listen, I met some of my best friends sitting next to them randomly in a random class. So I would strongly suggest you talk to your neighbor, because people end up sitting always in the same seats. There's no assigned seating, but just human nature. People end up sitting kind of in the same section.
Oh, I always switched it up. I was proud of that.
No. Oh my God. You would be like a chaos bomb because everyone always sits in like the same seats. And when someone's sitting in the seat, it's sort of like, why is he in my seat? Like, it's not my seat, but
I like that. I liked stirring it up a little bit. And you go ahead though.
Yeah. Oh my God, these kids would freak out. But I'm just sort of like, hey, turn to your neighbor. I was like, you could be sitting next to like your future best friend. And I just had to scoot to LA for my college roommate's 45th. His partner threw him a dinner party. And it was like 3 of us lived together senior year. This guy, Chris, Kemi, and myself. And like Kemi and I, Kemi's in DC, we flew out from, the East Coast, literally for 48 hours just to sit at the dinner table with his friends and wish him a happy 45th. I met him like the first week of school.
So you're saying these young people, they don't have access to the social skills? I've heard someone describe, and it was about a college too, students now come in to the lecture hall or whatever it was, or a big room, and they used to all be buzzing and talking, and now they just come in silently because they're looking at their phones, and that's a product.
And I'm like, who are you texting? Are you texting somebody like down the street? Are you texting someone next door? Are you texting someone across the country at a different college? Like, why are you not talking to the person right next to you? Because I was like, also, this is the person you need to study with. Like, don't forget, like, it's not just about making friends for shenanigans and hee-hees. It's like, you need someone to like help you walk through this work. I mean, these are the things that I say. I'm like, what is the point of being here if you're not present?
Is it effective?
I think so. I mean, it's so interesting. Like the students who like immediately do it. And it looks like they're like crazy proselytizers on the subway when they turn to their neighbor. They're like, so where are you from? And it's like, I don't know.
I mean, what about the way they see the world differently at all? I mean, culture-wise, I think one of the big changes, obviously, is all of the things around gender and sexual orientation and pronouns and all of that. That seems to be different. Are they all? Is there resistance to that? Is that change happening for everybody?
I mean, I teach at a school in New York City, even though it's a Jesuit institution, but I teach, in the Midtown campus. So the students, at least, and also it's kind of a self-selecting group where it's like, if you're going to take Professor Greer's class, that, I tend to get the more liberal students, if you will. Like, there are plenty of conservative students, at the university. I think it's a self-selecting thing where they don't take my classes. So by and large, I get students who are open to conversations, even if they're from small towns or, more conservative states. I ask my students what their pronouns are. So it's like, I've never gotten a student who's like, oh, that's stupid. I mean, those students exist, but I've gotten students who are by and large like, oh, great. Yes. He, him, or like she, her, like.
Sounds like a bunch of wokesters. Wokeism, woke. What is your?
It's like treating people with dignity and respect. I have colleagues who go by they, them. I have family members who go by they, them. So, and it's like people want to be seen and represented properly. So, I mean, listen, I give a long lecture on like when I call attendance the first day, and if I mispronounce your name, first or last, it is not okay to say like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'm like, your name means something. Your parents named you something for a reason. And like your last name is wrapped up in like history and, immigration and grandparents and great grandparents going through some things that we probably can't imagine. So if I can't get it on the first try, it's my job to keep practicing to get it right.
And that goes for everybody but, what is this? I can't.
Like, seriously, it's like, yeah, you can. Because it's like, we learned how to say Shostakovich and Tchaikovsky. And like, we know all these athletes' names. Like, the same people who were like, oh, I can't get it. It's like, you know how to say Giannis's full last name seamlessly.
That's a really good point.
Like Wachowski, like if you play hockey, you can get all those names perfectly. If you watch baseball, if you play basketball, and now, we have a greater number of African players who are in the league, people know those names seamlessly, rolls off the tongue. So like, you can't tell me like, oh, it's too difficult. It's like, well, then practice.
I can nail every Mandarin name because of how much ping pong I watch. Not true. Never watched ping pong.
I was supposed to say,
okay, well, what do you say, though, to the fact that it would seem that the entire Republican Party, the right-wing media atmosphere, and a lot of Americans are using the word woke pejoratively? And I'm asking a few different people this because there's different ways to answer it, but usually it's pretty succinct, the answer. But still, what do you think?
Well, I mean, they're really good. The Republican Party and the conservatives are just really good at branding. So they just choose arbitrary issues. And they're really good at, everyone's on the same page. They repeat it. They make it an issue. They make a non-issue an issue, right? All of a sudden, critical race theory. It's like, no one can define it. No one. You put their feet to the fire. It's like, okay, so tell me exactly what this is. It's like, it's people telling our kids to hate white people. It's like, that's actually absolutely not what it is. You still don't know what you're talking about. You're just saying CRT is terrible and wokeism. It's like, what is wokeism? What is it then? Like, is it just having people educated? Is it having people respect other people's cultures and identities? Like, you still can't define what wokeism is, but everyone just repeats it. And then sadly, Democrats and left-wing media repeat it. And they don't ever sort of nip it in the bud. And it's like, it's not a thing, guys. It's just not a thing. So stop making a nothing burger into a, 2-year story. But Republicans are really good at sort of fear tactics. And it's always the boogeyman of like the immigrants and the people of color coming to like, invade your homes and communities, which at the end of the day, it's like, fear that white women will run away with the natives. Like, that's always been the greatest fear. So like, they just keep repeating these tired tropes that unfortunately Democrats then start repeating as well. I mean, like, this is what makes me so angry about, pro-life. I'm like, these are people who support the death penalty and don't support, feeding young children or having any sort of social safety net. They absolutely aren't pro-life. There is absolutely no such thing as pro-life. We're having a conversation about a constitutional right for a woman to choose or not to choose what happens with her body. Grown-ass women. So it's like, stop saying pro-choice and pro-life. We're saying pro-choice or anti-choice. You were saying that women should not have a choice. That's it. So it's like, if we're having a conversation, let's have the real conversation about what is at hand. And what's at hand is a legal conversation about what women can and cannot do, right? So it's like, is my dad in charge of my ovaries for the rest of my life, or my husband, or whatever it may be? So it's like Democrats are just, they fall for the okie doke every time, because then they're like, well, pro-life. And it's like, stop. There's so many women who are pro-choice who would never have an abortion. That's their personal choice, because they can make the choice to have it or not have it. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Anti-abortion or anti-women's health care would be also accurate, it would seem.
It would also be accurate.
But that's not great branding. Yeah, there's always, well said, it's a Republican strategy. You see it over and over. It's branding. Remember Sharia law? Remember transvaginal? Someone brought that up as a not too long ago thing where even women were like, I don't even know what that is. That procedure. What are we talking about? Yeah.
And then, like just these non-scientists who are just like, we will let women have abortions, up until 6 weeks. It's like, first of all, we don't know we're pregnant until you miss your period, people. And that's 4 weeks. Yeah. So, and most women actually don't have, sort of periods that come on time. I mean, so this is also part of a larger, when you think about the right wing folks taking over our educational system, it's like, well, people don't even know what bodily physical mechanisms that happen on a monthly basis with women. Like, most men couldn't tell you the difference between like a urethra and a vulva. Like, they have no idea, or a uterus. I mean, like, we don't have sex ed. It's just like abstinence only, which we know doesn't work because we are mammals. So like, we're breeding a whole generation of just like ignorant people who have no idea how any of this works. So when you say, well, I'm letting you have an abortion in 6 weeks, it's like, dude, I don't even know if I'm pregnant at 6 weeks. Like,
right.
Who knows that? Like, if you read a book about science and not, mystical nonsense, then we'd have a better conversation.
You are a reader. You're a literature person. You're a Mark Twain person. You have lots of thoughts on
a proud trustee of the Mark Twain House.
That's right.
Hartford, Connecticut.
I knew there was something, but some official affiliation. But what do you make of the banning of the books in the schools? I just heard this New York Times podcast about it. It's happening in my town. I've been involved, I think, as you know, with our Board of Education. They're naming books now, and a lot of those books have to do with sex and sexuality, and specifically gay sex. They describe a gay sex scene, and parents want none of that, none of the sex in the books for the high school students in the libraries. What are we
we're
missing?
such like a Puritan repressed society. And it's like, first of all, gay children reading about heterosexual sex doesn't make them heterosexuals. So heterosexual kids reading about gay sex doesn't make them gay.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work that way. I just think that there's so many people who aren't living their own truth. They're like finger wagging. And it's like, ban everything. It's like there's a disproportionate number of books on these lists that are female authors, that are authors of color, that are queer authors. And so it's like, you just basically want us to read, again, white boy protagonist stories. It's like, we're tired of those stories. Like, there are other stories that could and should be told. But all of a sudden, these books are dangerous. I was like, listen, I love Lord of the Flies. Might I say that book is dangerous? Are you then going to say that we should all take over society and start killing one another and like beat the kid with glasses? No, you're not saying that. But I think it also goes to a larger conversation about how sort of white maleness is like the norm. And so many people who want to ban these books, it's like, well, these books threaten this idea that like the baseline of what humanity is or should be is white male. So first of all, you guys aren't even the majority in any capacity. So like, why is that? But I think the school board system is just one other way of, the right is always talking about indoctrination and the left is trying to indoctrinate us. It's like, you all are trying to indoctrinate children so that it goes back to this 1940s model of like the white male hero. Nobody else exists. They only exist as like side characters or like wives or, sort of non-speaking sort of entities that are there to serve the character that is white and male. And it's tired. It's old. And a lot of people are just clamoring for new stories. I mean, You see it on television, sure. These shows that do really well. And it's like, what? A show that does really well with like a woman of color who's the lead. It's like, yeah, surprise. Like, people can have stories where it's not some like, nebbish white boy who's like struggling over two girls. I've never seen that story before. Like, I mean, it's just like, things are just so tired.
I thought I've seen every white boy narrative, and then
oh my God, there's always a new one.
Yellowstone had me in its grips for a couple weeks.
I haven't seen it. I hear it's good, and it's like, listen, it's not like I'm against white boys. I love Judd Apatow. Like, I love all that stuff. Hey, listen, I have a lot of white friends.
I love. I don't know, like the Black Panther movie and Wakanda Forever, and I was talking to our friend Jason Johnson, and I was basically saying I think he got really offended when I said I like the second one better. I guess everybody don't say that. Okay, well,
yeah,
I
haven't seen it yet.
I don't know. I don't know. I think most of us, it's not virtue signaling necessarily. It's just like new narratives. I think that's what you're talking about from new different people, not only obviously black people or black women or Asian people. We're seeing a lot of different
everybody.
Yeah. And those are interesting no matter who you are, because it's something different. It doesn't have to be about you for you to enjoy it.
Right. Right. I mean, if that's the case, then I think, what was it? Octavia Butler say this, where it's like, people are like, you have to be it to, you have to see it. You have to be it to see it or something like that. And she's like, that's crazy because like there are lots of things we can't see that we can sort of, have our imagination of. But it's just like, I've read the canon, like I've been to American school. So it's like, I've read Shakespeare and I've read, Gatsby and like Catcher in the Rye and all these, great works of literature. And it's fine. It's not saying that they're great. And like, they talk about the human condition and they did speak to me to a certain extent, and it's like, I read the Iliad and the Odyssey and I was a classics minor and all that jazz. like, yeah, those books spoke to me as well. But that's not to say that, you know, a Toni Morrison or an Alice Walker or Maya Angelou couldn't speak to you.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's give it a whirl.
I like that. I see that James Baldwin book over your shoulder. I like that, that If Beale Street Could Talk. I like that. Well, I watched the movie. I interviewed back in the day the director, which is the only reason I watched the movie. I realized, man, I don't think I've seen or read a lot of stories about kind of black love or whatever you might want to call it. Like, they weren't made to some extent, or I wasn't watching them. They weren't being sent my way. I wasn't interested in them. And those, obviously, that's what but do you have any sympathy for people who feel what they're used to, what they're comfortable with, slipping away?
Yeah, it's the Archie Bunker syndrome. It's like, you remember in All in the Family, Archie Bunker was livid that George Jefferson and the Jefferson family moved into his Queens neighborhood. Like, how dare these Negroes move into my neighborhood? And then he was apoplectic that they moved out of the neighborhood to the Upper East Side to a deluxe apartment in the sky. Because financially, they did better than him. And he's stuck. And like, his way of life was just, he was stuck in the world. It's like, you lived in a world with no competition. You lived in a world with like your whiteness and your maleness was enough to get you by. I mean, let's be clear. When I went up for tenure and I have all these white male colleagues, you know, critiquing my, you know, CV. And I'm like, oh, really? Because your first book was 35 years into your career. Like, your CV looks nothing like mine, yet you get to assess me. Okay, make that make sense. But that's just what it was. It's like, you got tenure because you know, like, you were friends with somebody. Like, that's how tenure used to work for white men. And it doesn't work that way anymore. And so now it's, you know, it's a whole new system. And now we have to talk about fit. And, you know, I don't know if this person is, you know, done enough and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, let's be clear. A lot of these cats had a few centuries head start and they're really salty now that like they actually have to compete to stay. Yeah. And they're losing. And so that's part of the ire.
I wish I had tenure.
And tenure is, it's not a get out of jail free card, but it is. I love when people like write me hate mail and they're like, you know, I'm going to get you fired. It's like, okay, because I talked about Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Sure. Welcome to tenure.
Speaking of Joe Biden, should he run again?
You know, I don't want to sound ageist, but I just think that I think it's time for us to like pass the baton.
I think you just sounded ageist with that.
You know, he was like, I don't want to sound racist, but you know, here's the thing. I think that Joe Biden is winning. I mean, this cat is like, all I do is win. I hope he's like blasting DJ Khaled through the walls of the White House. He's having a great run. Like, he is.
No doubt.
No doubt. I just think that, you know, we see Nancy Pelosi's pass the baton to Hakeem. You know, at one point in time when we were talking about like last year, all the people who were helping Joe Biden, like, you know, kick ass and take names. Awesome. But you got like Clyburn, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, you know, you got Bernie floating around doing whatever he does. You know, it's like you got Joe Biden.
Why you gotta shiv like, Bernie?
I do not like that dude.
You don't?
All.
Yeah, we have talked about him. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Why do you not like Bernie?
As my grandmother would say, he's half a racist.
You think?
I really don't like him. I really don't. Like, I find him highly problematic. You know, and like, let's just take it this way. He says, like, first of all, you can't have a class analysis in this country with no racial analysis.
Right.
Get out of here.
Right.
You can't. Okay. And like, it's lazy, it's cheap, and it's completely void.
You think when he does class analysis, he leaves color and race completely out every time?
Absolutely. Yeah. And when he, you know, was like running for the presidency. And like, yeah, okay, Joe Biden and James Clyburn go way back. And it was very clear that James Clyburn was a big supporter of Joe Biden, even though he was in fourth place at the time going to South Carolina. Bernie Sanders couldn't even humble himself to go to South Carolina and meet with James Clyburn. And it's like, yeah, we assume that James Clyburn's supporting Bernie Sanders, but you couldn't even humble yourself to at least go meet with the man. And then when everyone's in the South and like Mississippi and like campaigning, Bernie Sanders is like, these Negroes aren't going to vote for me. So he just goes to like Minnesota or something like that. And it's just like, wow, the level of disrespect that you consistently show black people, black voters, black female voters in particular. Nina Turner is like, I get it, you're hype man. But like, other than that, you refuse to recognize the power of the black vote. And it's like, oh, well, they're with, you know, the establishment. So like, screw him. And I'm just like, you don't deserve to be president if you can't recognize such a significant portion of the electorate. So yeah, I'm cool on him, and he will never get my vote for anything.
Loud and clear, and I want to talk more about him with you.
But yeah, my point was septuagenarians. We need to pass the baton.
Yeah, well, all right, let me just let's just play the game. Is there anybody off the top of your head that you're like, this would be I think a great candidate that you would support, or?
I mean, listen, I like a long primary. I like a drawn out primary.
You do?
I like even when Hakeem became, the new...
You call him Hakeem, and you're this New York person who's pretty plugged in. Do you know this person? Do you know Hakeem Jeffries?
We've been in a lot of the rooms together. I don't know him.
You're not texting him.
Like, yes. Is his number my cell phone? Yes. That's usually a litmus test, but no, I don't use it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know a lot of people who know him.
Okay.
Care deeply about him, have a lot of respect for him. So, I'll go on that assumption for now. And I understand that this is a vote that's internal, right? Like, we didn't vote for Hakeem Jeffries. His colleagues did, which, I get. That's the process. My issue with how that went down, though, is that I like a little bit of a street fight. I actually like
I see what you're saying.
Debate. Yeah. I like to see the debate, even if I don't have a vote. So the fact that everyone comes from behind closed doors is like, it's unanimous. It's Hakeem. And I'm like, that rubbed me the wrong way. Not because it's Hakeem, but I like a process.
Right.
So if there were 4 people running, chances are, of the 4, probably, 1 or 2 would have been to the left of him and maybe 1 or 2 to the right. That's fine. And at the end, he probably would have emerged, and I probably would agree.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But for a host of reasons, even though it's not my vote, I get it. But I like to know, well, what were the options? Who else was running? What were the conversations that were had? Are we talking about, did funding for the military come up? Did funding for the Middle East and Israel come up? Did housing come up? Did, policing come up? What are the priorities of the Democratic Party? What were the tensions? What were the fights? And then I think I'd be a little more excited if I knew about the process.
So getting back to the presidential race, basically you're saying you're not naming names. You want to see the ideas being put out there and the personalities being put out there, and
who you are as a governor or a senator is a very different job than being president. It's still, governor's still an executive job, but what's your vision? What's the priority that you think that we should have for the party? And so that's why I think a robust primary season is a really interesting way for me to help get a decision. It's I don't really know Megan Whitmer like that. I don't really know Gavin Newsom. I don't really, everyone's like, Wes Moore. I'm like, slow down. Let this cat get sworn in first before we start talking about the presidency. But there are a lot of folks that I don't know what they really think about policies. And I'd like to hear it.
You said Megan Whitmer. You clearly don't know her.
Gretchen Whitmer.
Oh, you do know her. How about,
I always call her Megan Whitmer. Maybe that's just something psychological.
No, I think it's because you're categorizing her with that woman. You've been covering and interested in politics for long enough, as I have, that there's that woman who ran in California, the former HP executive. I want to say Whitman or something. Anyway, who cares?
Oh, right. That's right.
I just wanted to ask you before I let you go about Twitter and Elon Musk and how much time, if any, you're spending thinking about billionaires and how much power they've been able to concentrate.
Way too much power. Right. And, you're kicking off journalists. I mean, listen, I'm going down with the ship on this one. I really love the friendships that I've made on Twitter. I'm not migrating to Mastodon. I don't have time to learn another public, social media
you're
thing.
singing my song.
I'm on Instagram.
I did it, though.
I know I saw, and it's maybe I'll go when when Twitter implodes, but I just, I don't like people know my business anyway. And for safety reasons, it's not like I can really talk too much about, sort of certain things. So it's Instagram is, where I am with my birds and my pictures. Twitter, I really love for my political community. Oh. I've met some amazing people on Twitter. I've met some amazing friendships, gotten some amazing friendships from Twitter. But it's maybe it's okay, I'll make friends in a different way. But Elon Musk is rubbish. I mean, this man is thin skinned, doesn't really know what he's doing. You paid way too much money for this thing, and now you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. I think that picture with him and Jared Kushner and, in Qatar, and I was like, oh, Lord, what deals are being made in that little skybox? But, the fact that also it's I don't have this much time. So how do you have this much time?
I think that all the time about
I'm
that guy.
Dude, you have mad time to harass and fight with people. And I mean, the greatest day on Twitter was when, he let all those people have those blue checks and folks just like took it and ran with it. Yeah. It's like, and, it's funny and biting, but, we talked about it in my classes, had some real world implications when you have, what was the
pharmaceutical company? Eli Lilly. Somebody made
insulin is free
for Eli Lilly. They're like, everything's free. Insulin's free.
Like, their stock,
boom,
took a turn.
Yeah.
So I think that there are real, implications for his failed leadership. But also, someone reminded me the other day, we keep calling him like, the founder of Tesla. It's like, no. He hasn't created anything. It's like you took daddy's stolen, diamond emerald mine money from apartheid and a rich kid can sort of acquire more rich kid things, but like he hasn't built anything. It's not like he's some sort of super genius, as we have seen. I mean, like Mark Twain would be howling in the streets, cracking up laughing. Like this man has exposed himself as like a fraud and like low-key an idiot. Yeah. So here we are. But yeah, I'm just going to sit here and rearrange these deck chairs as the Titanic goes down.
Oh, good.
And, enjoy.
If someone gave you a Tesla for free, would you take it? Based on principle against him, you would be like, I can't drive that.
I don't know.
You would struggle. But I think that matters. You being conflicted over a free car because it's got the name Elon Musk on it. People are going to, that's the connection. I'm not making.
I stopped going to Equinox when I found out that they were Trump supporters. Like I believe in a good old boycott. And like, I don't like to support people whose values aren't mine. Yeah. And like, granted, it's not a perfect science.
Right. It's increasingly hard to do. The bigger the company, the more conflict.
But like, there's some companies that are just bold with it. So it's like, no, my money is, it's not like I make millions and millions of dollars. So it's like, with a little bit of cash and capital I have, I can actually make a statement with, will Elon Musk lose sleep if Chrissy Greer doesn't buy a Tesla? Absolutely not. But will I lose sleep if I buy a Tesla? Yeah, I would. And I'm not begrudging people who own Teslas. Right. It's like, fine. Yeah, no. First of all, I don't think New York has enough infrastructure in New York City. Well, so it's like, it would make no sense for me to have a Tesla. But let's just say it did. I don't want to support someone like him.
Exactly. I used to make the argument when people would say, I don't want to support Elon Musk by buying a Tesla. I'm like, well, whatever car you have, I'm sure the CEO's an asshole. So like,
right. And then, Trump supporting.
But yeah, and a Trump supporter. But then I'm like, nope, this guy's worse than Mary
This guy he's like low-key maniac.
He might not be as bad as Henry Ford, the OG, but he's currently the worst.
Yeah, he currently is the worst.
Wealthy.
So I think that there are ways that we can sort of quietly, have various protests. And I believe in that. So, and like, listen, I'm not telling people, burn your Tesla. It's like, no, but just know that,
no, like, it'll burn on its own, maybe, apparently.
Right. These shoddy craftsmanship.
Well, as long as you'll continue to podcast with me, I'll be happy.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, it's just this world is a little cuckoo bananas, but it is possible to literally just find a lot of joy in it.
Yes.
It's like there's so many great people. There are really so many great people around.
And nature, and there's so much great joy in the nature, which we
and in the wintertime, if you just listen, you can hear so many birds, like just different types. Because I mean, also our winter, in the city has been so weird. A lot of birds didn't leave because they're like, "Girl, it's hot. I don't need to go down south. Like, I'm good." it was like 70 degrees 2 weeks ago, so like we have a lot of birds who are just like, "I'm good. I didn't leave."
Can you do just a little bit more of the dialogue between those two birds? Just one more exchange, Chris?
Girl, where you going? I'm not going anywhere. Damn it! It's too warm. I'm not spending 3 days to go visit my cousin in Florida.
Can you? Bird has a cousin in Florida. I'm watching these deer behind my house in the woods behind my house every day, and it's a male because he's got the horns. He's a buck. But it's a bunch of littles, and I have created a story.
Listen, I am famous for some drama. I had bird drama when I went to St. Martin for 2 weeks last year. I mean, bird drama every morning. It was fights. They were building nests. They were competing on nests, and it was loud. They were pearly-eyed. I can't remember the name of this type of bird. It was amazing. I sent a picture to my birding friends. But I mean, they were beef in these St. Martin streets every morning
within the same species, even.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, listen, some of the back and forth. I was like, people only talk like that if it's over money or a man. I was like,
it must be one of the two for sure.
One of the two. But like, it was like some nest building drama, some seed drama. And I'm up every morning at like 7:30, literally. Like, I did nothing for 2 weeks. I really just needed to like bring it down a notch. And, I'd read my novels and, drink my breakfast beer, which is what I do on vacation.
What is that?
And breakfast beer.
I don't know.
A beer for breakfast.
Oh, okay.
That's what I have for breakfast.
Wow.
Like, good morning. And it's like a beer. And everyone's like, whoa, wait to get the day started. I'm like, yes, I'm on vacation. Vacation Chrissy is a whole nother person.
You should start a company. Yeah.
Vacation Chrissy is like, people are like, I didn't know one could live like this. I'm like, oh no, this is how we're living. Let me teach you.
Oh, that sounds like a real experience. All right. Well,
yes.
Because I think that this deer, there's no female. I think that the story I've written is that mom probably got hit by a car. And so dad's out there just like doesn't even really want to be there because he's a male deer. And I don't think they hang out. Like they don't usually hang out, I don't think. So
they're just kind of like tagging along.
I think he's kind of just like, well, your mom got hit by a Tesla. Right. So I guess I just will help you find food for a couple more weeks or something. But I'm out soon because I'm going to go make another mom, maybe. I don't know.
Right. Like I got another family down the road.
It's just interesting in nature.
I got another family in Poughkeepsie.
I don't know why you picked Poughkeepsie, but it does feel like it means something to you.
Well, I mean, this is like, I love animal narratives.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much going, because also like, they actually do have communities and, full lives.
Sure.
It's just, we're not privy to a lot of the drama that goes on, but it's time for me to put out my bird feeder. There's like drama in the bird community, of course, because there's so much drama in the bird community, but there's a division as to whether or not you should be feeding birds.
Well,
right?
I was going to say one of the issues with the drama might be being caused by you. You're putting out, you're creating a war. Here's a resource. Now fight.
But here's the thing. So some people say, well, especially in the winter months when there's snow, we haven't gotten snow yet, but that's why I haven't put it out yet. But some people say, well, because we've stolen so much of their environment in the winter months when it's harder to find food, it's our duty to actually help support them finding food and provide, some seeds, especially when it's snowing. Other people say, no, they have to adapt and learn how to find food because we're going to keep stealing their environment. So let's not handicap them. And then, for me, I'm like, well, I'll only put it out when it starts to really, really get cold and it's really snowy, even though that hasn't happened yet. So I haven't put out my bird seed yet. And then also, though, I don't like pigeons coming to the bird feeder.
Oh, you're anti-pigeon?
So I'm anti-pigeon, which is like, everyone's like, pigeons are birds and they're only dirty because we're dirty. So then I have a whole... I don't know who's yelling at me like that with that voice, but that's what I hear when people are like, why aren't you feeding your pigeons? Because when I see the pigeons, I'm like, scat, scat. But yeah, I don't like feeding pigeons. I'm like, you guys eat chicken wings off the street. Like, you all don't need bird seed.
The pigeons eat chicken wings off the street. They don't need,
they don't need seed. Right. But like the little sparrows, that is like literally that sight breaks my heart every single time when I see pigeons eating chicken wings. Like,
what did a pigeon hurt you at some point?
I do think that they're ugly and I shouldn't, I shouldn't discriminate, but like, hey, listen, as Woody Allen says, the heart wants what it wants.
Well, listen, the heart wants a bird feeder outside their window so the heart can see these birds and give them, the joy. It's just it's such a great source of joy, the bird feeder. So as I criticize and we point out the potential faults and dramas we're creating, I want my birds. I love my birds. I love
my little birds.
Me too.
No, I don't, and I only just get sparrows and mourning doves. It's not like I get, little cardinals or
I think
blue
it's
jays
fucked up that you introduced a cat to the equation. That's too much. I don't know why you...
Like, I did not.
What kind of Hunger Games simulation are you creating,
I
Chrissy?
don't have a cat. I really want a cat, but I don't have a cat. But, the thing is, it's like real birders, like, they're like anti-cat people because so many millions of birds die every year at the paws of cats.
Yep.
Oh my God, it's crazy. Listen, birders are some wild people. And like the bird drama in the birding community is always something. There's always something going on. I'm like, you guys have a lot of beef going on.
Where there are humans.
In between your binoculars. But yeah, little tufted titmice and I need to just go to Prospect Park and get my brain
Well,
fixed.
whatever you do, just make sure, as always, you send me photos. Thank you very much for talking to me. I'll let you go do your life and whatever it might be next. But I really appreciate you sharing much of it with us.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Well, there she goes, Christina Greer. So great. Always love talking to her, and very happy to be on her mailing list for her worksheet that she mentioned, Reflection 2022. She sent that to me and everybody else that I guess she sends that to, and it's great. I should tell her to post it publicly because it's really cool. It's a cool little worksheet that she says helps reflect on the past year and plan a bit for what she'd like to work on in the months to come. So she says to share with anybody that you want, and it just asks you to evaluate different areas of your life. I'm going to do it. Work life, school life, free time, humble abode, just everything about your physical environment at home, friendships, romantic interactions, familial interactions, health and wellness, and state of mind. And you just write a little bit about it. It's like a writing prompt is a way as well. I like that. She adds a little quote from Margaret Fairless Barber that says, "To look backward for a while is to refresh the eye, to restore it, and to render it more fit for its prime function of looking forward." I like that, and I like Chrissy. And I love Christine as well. Christine Romans, Chrissy Greer, thank you both very much for joining me. Thank you for listening, for pressing play on this podcast, for spreading the word, for rate and review on Spotify and Apple, for your paid subscription on patreon.com/Pete Dominic. I cannot do it without you. So please sign up now and tell your friends to listen to the pod. It's hard as hell to promote this thing and not my favorite thing to do, so I need your help. Thank you, guys, very, very much. I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow or anytime. Stand up with Pete at Gmail, and see you on the Discord if you're a subscriber anytime, and at the Hangout tomorrow night, where maybe we'll get some special surprise guests. You never know. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Take us out, John Carroll.
You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.